Hey, this is Evan Woodbury with Go Vols Extra and the Knoxville News Sentinel for another installment of double coverage in which we take your questions from Twitter and Facebook and social media. And my colleague Brendan Quinn was nice enough to decide to join us this week. What a thrill to have you here.
Thank you, Evan. It was, I made it back from Oregon just for this.
Well, that's great.
There you go.
That's great. So now we're going to encourage you, obviously, every week to take your questions, but we got a handful this week that we'll take. So let's hear for the first one.
All right, first one. Will Tennessee's offense be more creative than the Oregon game? Maybe some wildcat, long passes, halfback passes, etc.
Well, I think possibly. I think obviously going into the Oregon game, they knew they wanted to control the ball a little bit, and so maybe the game plan was a little more run heavy. But I think you're going to have a similar scenario this week against Florida, even though it's a totally different type of team. Florida likes to control the clock, and I think Tennessee will have to lean on its strengths in the same way it did against Oregon, which is right now the run game. Until they have a passing game to speak of, I think that's going to be what they lean on.
Well, I'm sure we'll get into the quarterback situation more as we go on here, but I think in terms of creativity, switching things up, if there is a degree of that, I think it would come in potentially adding packages for different quarterbacks doing things like the read option and kind of quarterback-specific packages to add a new ripple to things. Now, whether that's actually going to be the case, we'll find out, but it hasn't certainly been ruled out, I'd say, as the week has gone on.
Absolutely.
Next question. Which mobile Vol quarterback gets in on the action this week versus Florida?
Good segue. Well, I thought it was interesting, one, that Butch Jones came right out and said, fairly unprompted on Monday, that the quarterback competition was open. And then he subsequently said that he wanted to see more running out of the quarterback, and that didn't necessarily mean a pure dual threat passer, but just someone that could run the ball occasionally, which Justin Worley really hasn't done. Now, will we actually see that in the game? I remain skeptical. I tend to think that it's going to be either Justin Worley or Nathan Peterman. I'd be very surprised if we saw a true freshman, certainly at the beginning. At the very most, maybe a very limited package for one of the freshmen, but I'm not even certain of that. The question then becomes, though, Nathan Peterman, is his mobility advantage over Justin Worley? Is that enough to put him over the top?
Right, and is it that dramatic of a difference? I mean, I don't think anyone would sit there and say that Nathan Peterman is, Johnny Manziel or anything like that, or even that elusive of a quarterback or anything like that. I look at a guy like Riley Ferguson as I think he has a decent combination of that mobility that they're looking for. Joshua Dobbs is probably the fastest, most elusive of the quarterbacks, but I think in terms of arm strength combined with mobility, I like Riley Ferguson. I'd be interested to see if they throw him out there just to kind of see how he deals with the line of fire.
I think it's none of their four quarterbacks are pure running quarterbacks necessarily. It's just, can they add a little something on top of the passing game? The problem is Peterman has had that advantage from the get-go over Worley, even if it is just a slight advantage, and it wasn't enough for him to win the job over the last 9 months. I'm not certain it'll be enough for him to win the job this week, but we'll have to wait and see.
Staying with the quarterback question, this comes from Facebook. How does the coaching staff plan to handle our weakness at the quarterback position and our secondary making mistakes, letting big plays happen over the top? I understand we are a young team and starting fresh, but I believe these are basic problems that could be handled quickly and could improve our team greatly if handled.
That's a complicated question. I guess one on the quarterback side, one on the secondary side. Starting with the quarterback, there's no question that it limits the offense when you don't have any kind of passing game, whether long or short-term passing or short passing game. And I think that's why it's been a point of emphasis, that eventually any advantage you have in the running game is going to wear out if you can't keep the defenses honest by throwing the ball successfully occasionally.
And talking about the mobility of the quarterbacks, at least having someone who can ad-lib, someone who can extend a play, someone who can make things happen with their feet on their own outside the playbook. When you have an offense with the lack of weaponry like the Vols have right now, I feel like just having someone who can kind of do something unexpected or out of the ordinary or that a defense can't game plan for, that would maybe open some things up and maybe keep defenses honest right now. Because right now, I mean, you know what you're getting with the Vols, and I mean, Justin Worley's very little threat to move or run or do anything. So you can kind of just line up and drive right into that backfield and know that he'll be there.
And as far as the secondary is concerned, I mean, that's probably not a problem that's going to go away anytime soon. Cameron Sutton is a true freshman. I mean, for a true freshman thrown into the mix totally unexpectedly, I don't think he's doing a bad job, but you take him to Oregon for his first road game against the best offense in the nation. I think the results were almost predictable. I think he'll get better as the season goes on, but there aren't reinforcements waiting to come in. You're going to have to go with him. You're going to have to go with Devon Swafford, Malik Foreman. They're going to have to play a lot. There's just no alternative right now.
And regarding the big plays over the top are certainly a problem, but I think this game is the biggest question for the defense to look for is big plays, period. If you remember last year's game, the Vols were right in it after halftime and then let up an 80-yard touchdown right out of the chute in the second half. Totally changed the dynamic of the game, and you could argue was kind of the first big domino to drop in that season, going downhill rapidly. And you saw it last week, but you can take it with a grain of salt just because of Oregon's style of offense. They'll do that to a top 10 team, let alone a team trying to find itself. So this week, I think limiting the number of plays over 20 yards is something to really keep an eye on in terms of not only the outcome of this game, but everything moving forward.
Right. Make offenses work for whatever they get. And we talked about that at Oregon. If they're going to score on an 80-yard drive, make them work for it rather than one play. Yeah. Most of their touchdown drives averaged about a minute and a half. So they didn't have to work real hard to score, and that's going to be something that's important for Tennessee moving forward.
All right, last one. What would a victory in the Swamp do for the team's confidence going forward, and especially mean to our seniors?
Well, undoubtedly it would be huge going forward. This is one of those games against preseason top 10 teams that most people just penciled in as a loss. And if you win one of those games at any point along the schedule, it makes that path to bowl eligibility so much easier, so much more possible. So, this would be a monumental upset in that regard, and it would be the first victory against Florida for Tennessee in a long time, first one for anybody on the team, let alone the seniors. But it would be a signature win for Butch Jones coming in week 4. It'd be a pretty big deal.
And just in terms of Tennessee looking like Tennessee again, resembling the program that people are used to, going and winning in the Swamp. Even when Tennessee was great and a national contender, they still had trouble with Florida. I think they've lost 16 of the last 20, something like that, 8 straight. And just this program kind of getting its mojo back. When you've lost 15 straight to ranked opponents, it's hard to say to recruits that you're nationally relevant. So at least getting a win in the Swamp over a team and a game that would really draw a lot of attention back to the program, show what Butch Jones is doing here in terms of this year's recruiting class, keeping that intact, and all the recruiting classes going forward, it would be absolutely huge.
Well, we'll be there in the Swamp in Gainesville on Saturday. Have coverage from all of our staff, photos, video, including our live blog, live chat, Game Day Central on Go Vols Extra. And if you want to contact us on Twitter throughout the week or send questions for next week, I'm at Tennessee Beat. He's at BF Quinn, and we'll talk to you soon.